welcome to this edition of Hands Off. My name is Red Hackett. I am your host, and tonight's guest, she's actually a special guest, and part of the reason is because we kicked off our Breaking Code Silence with a two-person panel. We did kind of like some panel questions to introduce individuals, and tonight we've invited her back to expand upon her story and talk about it a little bit more. So please welcome Alexandra Barry. And I really appreciate you for coming in and you know being willing to give detail. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you again for having me back on your show.
Absolutely.
It's an honor to be here.
Yeah. So I know that some of it is we're going to have a little bit of overlap from the first time that we had you in the studio, but I think it's okay, and I know that we're going to go into a little bit of detail. So why don't we start by having you just go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us again what school or institution, I have a very hard time calling them schools, that you attended, and then give us a synopsis of your story and tell us what you would like for everyone to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Alexandra Barry, and I am born and raised here in Palm Beach County, Florida. I'm still here. And I had my awakening with realizing like what happened to me as an adolescent last year in August. And I attended a program called Growing Together that was in Lake Worth, Florida. I have one of the rule books here out of the many. It was definitely an experience I don't wish on any child or even family to go through. What led me to enter this facility is my family was going through a terrible divorce. My mother had filed divorce on Valentine's Day of 2003. And for me as a young adolescent, I was 14 years old at the time this was going on. And by the end of 2003, I had my first sexual assault. I unfortunately was raped in my mother's home under her care by a person who was in their later 20s. And unfortunately, my mother did not believe me when I reported it the next morning to her. And that led me to take extreme measures to get the perpetrator out of my home.
And you're navigating this at the age of 14, I just to be clear.
At this time, I had just turned 15. I had actually mapped my whole entire year of that year, and I determined actually around the date that the crime happened, which was on October the 28th of 2003, based on my own personal research I've done on my own life, with going through school records, and trying to put a pieces together in my life to see, okay, from that experience as a child and not having the correct resources and supports, how long did it take me to enter this institution, right? So within 3 months, sure. Unfortunately, it's just the way it went. What led me to the final day was, it was on February the 28th of 2004. And I had been a first-time runaway from my home, from my mother. And not even 3 hours later, I was found. I cooperated with police. I was not under arrest. However, I was told I cannot get out of the car. So I'll never forget the day that I entered this hellhole. We get to the facility, the gates closed, and this was in downtown Lake Worth, right next to City Hall, mind you. And anyhow, sorry about that.
You're fine.
The internet, special. Anyhow, I'll never forget. The gates closed. I came out of the police car. My whole family was there. My father, who I had not had a relationship with at the time. And I had my aunt there, and I still didn't know exactly where I was going yet. Like, I thought it was just a therapist appointment. And from there, within, I don't know, 2 to 3 hours, that's when they told me, you're in a 12 to 18 month program. You're not going home, and you have to earn your rights to go back home, pretty much. And that's the night that I was stripped away from my family for almost, I don't know, I want to say about 13 months. I didn't go home.
Right.
I was fostered out every night to other families' homes, kids that were in the program. We are, just to give a little history, we're a spinoff of the Straight Inc. programs,
Okay.
which were, we're a third branch of that. So we had old newcomer and old comer roles, first phase, second phase, third phase. Each phase, you got to earn your rights back. Well, as they say. I mean, we had absurd rules, from not being able to look out the window. And if we did, we would have to say, I looked out the window. I couldn't make eye contact with newcomers or anyone outside of the organization. I had to ask permission to stand. We were immediately put on medications when we entered the program. It's quite interesting because the place is labeled a drug treatment center, but yet we're drugged. Makes no sense, but that's just the way it goes. And I had been prescribed Seroquel and Lexapro immediately. And the Seroquel, obviously, I should have never been prescribed that medication now that I know what it does and what it's treated for. I've done my research and connected with other survivors from my organization. And depending on what decade the client was in the program, we were prescribed the similar medications I found. I have a list.
Can I just ask one question?
I've been mapping everything out.
Yeah, I just want to ask one quick question. So, were you not sleeping at the
No.
institution? You actually
No.
went into somebody else's home.
Correct, from the Tri-County area. So depending on where the other foster parents' homes were located, for instance, some homes were right next to the building, others were all the way down in Miami, which is like a good 2 to 3 hour drive.
And so, did you ever stay in the same home, or you went to different homes at various times?
Different homes every night.
And are the individuals that are housing you, others, children, whatever, are they aware of what is going on at this place?
So, yes and no. They were drinking the Kool-Aid too, because at the time you're in it, you don't realize it's a cult. Like, it took me until last year to realize that, oh my God, this place was a complete cult. And I even talked to a cult researcher up in New York and shared my whole story. And she totally, I'm part of a project with that. It's a whole nother conversation. However, some parents did fight for us towards the end to have more rights. There is a lawsuit that it's on public record saying how the conditions were inhumane for us. And the other thing is too, you have to understand this program, the local courthouse would court order children to this program.
Yes.
Now, as time progressed, I found, based on the research I've done, it was so bad that judges stopped sending kids to this place, but it never shut down, ever.
And
until 2006, when they allegedly claimed the organization ran out of money. However, I disagree with that completely.
And all the while you're receiving an education, and I'm using that term very lightly. The
education in there was a joke.
Right.
And I found kids in the program prior to me. So, for example, in the 90s, they didn't have an education. Their education was a once a week phone call with some teacher. Okay. In the 90s.
Yeah.
Until they got in the upper phase. That's when they would go to Forest Hill High School.
And
you also
experienced I don't know whether it was called this there, seminars. Did you have that? And like the whole brainwashing mental.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we did the
Okay.
chanting. We would have to sing lullaby songs. Okay, that was the only kind of music that we can sing and listen to. And we also had different group attack therapy. We had every Friday night, I call it the shame session of our parents. That was the one time we got to see our parents once a week on the Friday night meetings. They would come in, girl side parents would sit on guy side, and guy side parents would sit on girl side. It's just the rules of the program. The only time we were allowed to look at our parents is when they were standing up saying a past situation that made them feel XYZ. So, of course, there were parents that abused that, 1,000%. There apparently, one girl, this was not in my program, but from what I've gathered, she was assaulted in front of hundreds of parents from a staff member and inappropriately touched, and nobody did nothing. Not even the parents. Not even the parents, except for the kids the next day. They called DCF, like they demanded to call DCF and file complaint after complaint. And that was one of the rare times that was done. And there's records of it.
And were there times where either you were denied food, sleep, care? I mean...
Oh, yeah. So the interesting thing is, depending on which host home you went to, I'll never forget this one. I absolutely hated going to his house because he'd only feed us bread and butter as dinner and forced us to take 3-minute cold showers. Great parent. Great. So depending on the house that you went to, they could enforce additional rules on top of the children.
It is, it's appalling, and this is the first actually that I'm hearing about like the different housing, and it's disturbing that this is, you know, but that is the nature of a cult, as we know, and as you know now. I think the problem that I'm having that's really difficult for me is that you were not a troubled teen. You were a teen that you were in trouble. Like, and when I say that, I mean it in the sense of having a sexual assault at the age of 14, not being believed, in a broken home, and clearly fending for yourself from a standpoint of just trying to survive what had happened, only to be sent off.
Subjected to even more abuse and more, it's just like this vicious cycle,
yes.
You know? And I had no control over it.
No, and did you reach a point where you conformed with the program just to get out of there?
I eventually was washed. That's the way because the thing is, I have all my journals, and I would write a lot of prayers, and because that's all you can really do, you know. And one of the things that we could do, we couldn't read a Bible, by the way, but we could pray. So I noticed about 9 months in the program is when my thinking changed, and I started to believe I was a drug addict. I started to believe I was a piece of crap. I started to believe all these bad things that they literally embedded in our brain to make us shameful, full of guilt, and have really no sense of value to live, honestly. Right. I mean, I was suicidal in there at one point. And I remember there was times I felt so alone, and I didn't want to talk to my old comer. I didn't want to talk to staff. I would have to talk to a damn tree. And I'm not the only one. And that's what kids do to survive in these kind of environments. Mm-hmm. And again, they'll take extreme measures too, to just go to the local hospital and get Baker acted. Because why? Not because they want to get Baker acted. They have more freedoms at that hospital.
Sure.
We'll eat better food on top of it. Yeah. And call home. We couldn't call home.
Right, right. And I know from, speaking with you before and just interviewing other guests that, I understand that the other people that you were with, your peers, helped you to get through that. But there is a part of you that comes from within to survive, and you did that. And I'm trying to what I want to ask you is, what do you think got you through that? And do you know your exit date? Most do. That's why I'm asking. And
there's no exit date.
There is not.
That's the thing that gets me. There's no exit date. And judges were ordering kids with no exit date. How is that legal? So anyhow, but no, what got me through it, this is a little different. For me, I did it for my brother. I used my brother as my hero because I knew my brother needed my protection. And I used him as my motivation to get through the program, figure out play the game that none of us want to play, and pray to get out. I mean, I still live today in constant terror. Sure. I always think of the worst case scenarios.
How could you not?
I blame the program for that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, what I want to talk about is some of the residual effects that have surfaced in your life now. What does life look like right now? And I also know that you are a very charged advocate, and we'll talk about that too. So just sit with us, and you'll hear more of her story. So thank you.
And does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Boardwalks built for fun. Legendary rock and roll clubs.
This is how we do it. Hip hip hop.
Casinos by the ocean.
Hip hip hop.
Now that's New Jersey. 130 miles of beautiful beaches. Solid rock. And everything in between.
Look in the window.
Now that's New Jersey. Plan your New Jersey trip at visitnj.org. Waves of fun. Nights of excitement. And a trail of memories. Now that's New Jersey.
Welcome back to Hands Off with my special guest, Alexandra Barry. And, this is really an intense episode as we're talking about this. It's people are not aware. And while we were on break, we were talking about the number of individuals that have lost their life after that you're actually keeping track of. And that number was, did you say 32?
32.
32, yeah. It doesn't surprise me, and the show has talked often about ACE scores, and early death is one of the effects. So for you to be here is just, it's phenomenal. So I think what I want to ask is what kind of effects do you see now in your adult life? You know, I know you talked about how like you think in terms of like the worst case scenario or anything like that, but what else can you share with us?
A lot. Unfortunately, you know, when you're exposed to that kind of torture and abuse, unfortunately, in my 20s, I was attracted to abusive relationships and was unable to, like, my radar to identify abuse is broken, is the best way I can describe it.
Yeah.
I'm better today, more than ever before, but that's because I'm educating myself and learning who, what, you know, it's just when you have PTSD, like I do, and I also do blame the PTSD from my adolescent life.
Sure.
Growing together enhanced my PTSD to a whole nother level. You know, I still find myself with this, and other survivors too. I've asked, like, do you guys have like this paranoid feeling, always looking over your shoulder about the law and stuff? We're all like this.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing.
And then I noticed we all are also into like nature. And I feel like the reason why we are, because the lack of what we had, we couldn't go to the beach. We couldn't even touch grass.
Yeah.
As children.
It's a really great point.
Grass.
Yeah.
You know, the basic things. There's certain foods that I'm very avoidant. I avoid. I know it sounds a little weird, but even with like soaps and conditioners, there's just certain things I completely avoid because it reminds me of that terror of my life.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, for those that have never experienced PTSD and or just flashbacks, it can be crippling. And just exactly what you said in regards to the soap, like just the simple smell of the soap or the texture can like take somebody down quick. And you know, those that have had an addiction problem in the past, if that's the coping mechanism to get through it, that's, you know, that's the direction that they end up going. So yeah, I can't even, you know, it's awful to me. And you know, it's a lifelong sentence that you're going to have to deal with. And that is just, it's disturbing to me. What does life look like for you today? Obviously, you know, you made it. You're an adult. You know, are active in the advocate community. Let's talk a little bit about that, just because I think it's definitely something that gives me a great amount of respect for you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely a journey. So I've been doing a few things since my awakening. I figured, well, if this happened to me then, it shouldn't be okay today, right? So I don't know. I started calling the human trafficking hotline, and they told me get other survivors to call in. I said, okay, fine. So we did that. And then I got a call from our local authorities, which I haven't heard from. And I'm not surprised because of some stuff that I come across. And anyhow, so I'm now advocating, and I actually just came back from Tallahassee last week. I have joined another organization that is very passionate about juvenile justice and prison reform, criminal justice reform, all that good stuff. So I'm educating myself, and hopefully in the near future, with me being involved with Breaking Code Silence as well, we're building a legislative team here in Florida, and I will be a part of that. And just meeting with senators, meeting with state legislators, sharing our story, and hopefully we can't shut, it's not that we want to shut down the troubled teen industry. We want to make sure children are safe. We want to make sure they're actually getting the help, you know, that they deserve, and not to continue the decades and decades of abuse that we have. Even here, you know, in Florida alone is one of the notorious states for the abuse. I mean, this problem's a global issue.
Yes.
But, you know, what I can focus on is what we have here now. And, so, it's been a journey.
I always want to bring this up because, you know, I say it in every single interview and you just never know who is watching. But while your institution that you were at is now closed, am I correct at that? In that statement? Right. But there are others that are still in full operation, either under the same name or they do what many have done, and that is change their name, but you know, everything is remaining the same in terms of what they're doing.
Right.
And it's frightening. I am also part of, just like as you are, the Breaking Code Silent groups and WASP, and it is shocking to me that there are parents that are still sending children to these institutions. So your work as an advocate is huge. You know, and I know that you had like a poster or some materials, or can you just show that for us? I want to make sure that we...
Yes, absolutely. So this is one of the boards I have made.
Yeah. You know, I applaud any effort that is creating change. And, you know, one of the questions I have here in front of me is they ask you, why did you want to speak out today? But I think that we have answered that. Yep. So that pamphlet, yes, you did actually send a copy of that to me, or an image, but I've seen that pamphlet out. And, you know, and that's the thing is, like, you know, I don't want to give a free pass to parents that did this because, you know, with a little bit of homework, they would have figured it out. But you read that and the image looks everything looks like it would be on the up and up and great. And it was not that way, as we know. So.
No, and then you can see, I mean, I'm trying to.
No, I'm glad. Yeah.
Nope. There's a picture of the inside of the building with me and.
Yes.
A few others.
Yeah.
So.
I think that, you know, we have a long way to go, and for, you know, the opportunity to advocate for others as you are doing, because not everybody could be doing what you're doing right now. And as we approach the end of this and we come to our last, you know, like 3 minutes or so, what would you say to somebody that's watching this that, you know, they have the same background as you, they're struggling to get through it? Any advice, any tips?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my biggest words of wisdom is, in order for us to heal, we must report and come forward and be the voice for the voiceless.
Yeah.
Which is, even for us, like for me, because of the effects of these programs, I feel like I'm going back in time to save that little girl who always needed that love and help. And I'm thinking, I use that as my motivation to all the children right now, as we're speaking, that are stripped away from their family and are incarcerated and have that lack of hope. You know, because I know they're here. Yeah. And they're everywhere. Everywhere. And that's what keeps my fire alive.
Yeah. I could not agree with you more. And, you know, you being here tonight, doing the work that you're doing, you know, it is letting people know that they're not alone. And you know, nothing could be more important than that, because we always think that, you know, we are all alone in our own, you know, in our own head, in our own trouble, in our own pain. And when you hear or see someone that is a beacon of light, and that is exactly what you are, it changes the game. So while you might not know all the people you're helping, I assure you that every single time that you speak out, you are helping somebody, whether it's somebody that is dealing with the past, but you're also helping somebody, preventing them from going there in the future. So I can't thank you enough for coming back on and talking about this. I know that it's never an easy situation. It's always hard to talk about it. But I think that, you know, I have a lot of respect for you, and I look forward to seeing the change that you are already in the process of creating. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That is our episode. thank you for tuning in. It's a really important topic, and by all means, look it up. Find out how you can get involved, how you can support the change, and we're going to continue this series as we move along. So continue to watch. Thank you.